Thank you, Chair Parks. And is Lynn Longfellow with us as well?
Yes, I believe so. Let me double check.
Yeah, I saw her.
Yes, I see her.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Commissioners, Budget Committee members, county staff, and administration. For the record, I am Tammy Little, Clackamas County Assessor and Tax Collector. With me today are Bronson Rueda, our Deputy Assessor, and Lynn Longfellow, our Appraisal Manager. I appreciate your time, and I'm pleased to present the proposed 2021 budget for the Assessor's Office today. I do plan to go through the slides quickly in order to leave time for answering your questions. And Bronson will go ahead and advance the slides for us, please. So to talk about the revenue and expenditures, we are supported primarily by the general fund, but we are unique in that we bring in, I believe it's around 74% of general fund money to the county. In our expenditures, as Lauren and many others have said, our largest expenditure is in personnel. I would like to note that we have added only 2 positions in over 10 years. And we also do fall below staffing models set by the Oregon Department of Revenue. I wanted to speak about one of those 2 positions because you approved it last year it was conditional upon cost recovery, and it did in fact pay for itself more than. We added over $10 million in assessed value to the tax roll. We added additional taxes of $421,000. which is a one-time add to 2020 for back years, and approximately $165,000 to 2020 and each year thereafter. You want to advance again, Bronson? On these next 2 slides, unless you have any specific questions about these numbers, which I know you've already reviewed, I will go on to talk about our accomplishments, if that's okay. If you have questions, please let me know. We can go on to our accomplishments. I'll start talking about it while we're waiting for the slide. We had several accomplishments. Our biggest task each year is to administer the property tax system in Clackamas County, complete our statutory requirements. We create, bill, and collect an annual tax roll. And as you know, all of our work is governed by Oregon statute. We also accomplished the first step in integrating our aerial imagery with our appraisal software, which is a significant advancement in our goal to increase efficiencies in valuation of property. As many other departments, I think the whole county, in fact, we were also quickly successful setting up to work remotely during this crisis. I credit that to TS and also to our managers and supervisors who worked long hours. They were very creative, solved problems, and overcame challenges. Did a really great job. I'm very grateful to work with the team that I have. And then if we could go on to the next slide. We'll review our budget cuts. They were all in materials and services. We did eliminate the private fee appraisal services that we've had for over 20 years, 15 to 20. We, in part because that private fee appraiser retired, and also in this particular year in 2019, we were able to get through our appeals. So we did fine. That is one area in the budget cut that is potentially there could be a negative impact depending on future appeals, but I know we can manage that. We also eliminated travel and we reduced training. We will need to continue to find ways to meet required continuing education, but we have plans and believe that we can do that. That was a very quick overview of our budget and discussion about the, we do a great deal of work in our office, and I went over it quickly, but I know you were wanting to get through this, so we had time for questions. And unless you have questions at this point, I will stop with the review of the budget and move to answering the questions that you asked us in advance.
That would be fine if you could address those advanced questions now, Tammy. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to take a couple, and then Lynn and Bronson are going to jump in and answer a couple as well. The first one, do you expect the changes to the economy to impact property values in Clackamas County? And the way I'm going to answer that today is, well, the assessment date for determining market value is January 1, which is pre-COVID for the 2020 tax roll.
Mm-hmm.
If we see a decline in market value in 2020, it will not be reflected on the tax roll until 2021. Currently, the Realtors Multiple Listing Service shows an increase in market value in our area, and also our 2020 annual certified ratio study indicates an increase to market value of around 2 to 5% countywide. Maximum assessed value by statute will continue to grow 3% each year unless the market falls below that. Taxes are based on the lower of market or that maximum assessed value. And this year, most properties will continue to pay on that maximum assessed value. In the last recession, it was 2012, which was the high point of properties paying on market value because the market values fell below, and that occurred on 29% of all accounts. We're answering today based on the data that we have. We know that market value is showing a slight increase, and we know that most taxpayers will continue paying on assessed value. Going forward, impacts to new construction and commercial properties is an unknown, and it will be dependent upon the economic recovery that happens, hopefully happens, right? The next question is regarding concerns about future tax payments. Again, we have some data. May 15th, just last week, was the due date for the fiscal year 1920's final payment, and our collection rate is very similar to this time last year. For 2020, we expect this fall, we expect our typical collection rate of 87% will be collected this year by the end of November. In order to receive the 3% discount, most payments are made in full on or before November 15th, and that's a big factor in that high collection rate. Some of the reasons are lenders often require mortgage impounds and usually always require taxes kept current, even when taxpayers pay us directly. With that information and the historical data from the 2008 recession, we do anticipate our fall collections to remain consistent. Of course, there are many factors that could affect collections, including appeals, job losses, and the business community's ability to pay. And I will just have to say, if there is another spike or shutdown, we really have no way of knowing what could happen. Changes throughout this crisis have happened often and quickly, and without a crystal ball, there are factors we do not know at this time. Another fact we do have is that after 2008, tax revenues did continue to increase each year, but the growth rate of that increase of revenue fell sharply, and that decline started in 2010. The decline in growth was based on the market values dropping dramatically, and that may or may not be similar depending on the recovery from this crisis. So I'm happy to take questions, or we can wait until the end, and I'll let Lynn take the next couple of questions here, please.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm going to, on the screen, it's questions 2 and 3. We were asked to estimate compression effects on property tax revenue. We expect that there will be little change to compression in 2020. As Tammy indicated, real market value is increasing. Maximum assessed value will grow that statutory 3%. So with that large of a gap between real market value and maximum assessed value, we do not typically have compression. Currently, that gap is 64.3% on residential properties and 63.5% on commercial industrial properties. So any increase in compression or the loss of taxes that are collected occurs over several years of declining values. So we do not anticipate that for this current year. After the 2008 recession, the high point in compression came in 2012 and 2013, 4 to 5 years of declining values. So it takes quite a while. The next question was, do we expect recording fees to be reduced? And I will say the county clerk could better answer this question, as we do not receive all recordings in the assessor's office. We receive ownership changes and boundary changes. What I can tell you is that the number of ownership changes and boundary changes for the months of March and April of 2020 are very similar to what we saw in that same time period in 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Bronson, if you'll take the remaining questions.
Last 3 questions on the list, 5, 6, and 7. The first one, how many hires have you made this fiscal year?
Bronson, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Very, very light.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Everybody
Okay.
okay? Can y'all hear him?
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Ms. Parks. So question number 5, how many hires have you made this fiscal year? We completed 7 new hires in the current fiscal year. 6 were to refill existing positions, and 1 was to fill the new position created to integrate our oblique aerial imagery, which Tammy discussed earlier. These 7 positions represent about 12% of our 60 FTE. 2 of those positions were promotions. Also in this fiscal year, we purposely left a position vacant for 7 months in order to create vacancy savings. And currently we have 1 vacant position. The next question, number 6, do you feel your budget is stabilized over the next few years? Well, as presented in this budget forecast, we feel our budget is stable for the upcoming fiscal year. However, for future fiscal years, we feel our budget stability is less certain. For example, we need to replace our core software, which is 20 years old. One of our performance clackamus strategic results is to have a funding plan in place by 2022. Lack of funding could compromise this goal. Next, 15.8% of our budget is supplemented by the state CAFA grant. A reduction in this grant is possible in upcoming years. Lastly, we have plans for other expenditures needed to improve efficiencies and reduce the need for additional staff. With reduced funding, it will be difficult to achieve meaningful efficiency gains. If there's no questions, I'll go on to the last, number 7 question. How many vehicles over 10,000 are you budgeting to purchase? So our budget does not have a line item for vehicle purchases because we lease vehicles, and the oldest vehicle in our aging fleet is from 2004. We actually have 4 of those 2004 vehicles. Maintenance on older vehicles is continuing to increase. A recent analysis indicated replacing 2 to 3 vehicles this year would be the same overall cost or less than keeping older vehicles. The safety of our staff is constant. Typically, newer vehicles are safer vehicles, so we are inclined to move forward with replacing 2 to 3 of our older vehicles with new leased vehicles. And that concludes our advanced question portion.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that presentation and for being so responsive on the questions that were asked in advance. We very much appreciate that. Brenda, I see that we've got at least 1 hand up, and we'll see where that goes after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Feely. Thank you. Thank you, Tammy. That was a good presentation. I was just curious if you knew yet what your neighboring counties are assuming in terms of property taxes. Are they making the same assumptions about payment percentages that you are?
Hi, Tom. Yes, thank you for the question. And the assessors statewide, we talk often. And I was talking with, I've recently spoken with the Deschutes County, Multnomah, Washington, Yamhill. And yes, we all have that same expectation that taxes will be, the collections will be similar. Lenders have paid. We saw it after the lenders were very aggressive about paying taxes after the 2008 recession.
Sure.
We saw actually after that recession, we saw an increase in our collections, and it has maintained since then.
So,
I also was reading some information nationally from our IAAO folks, and there's discussion around the country that expectation, although, you know, as we said, we don't have a crystal ball and we don't know all the factors yet to come, but that anticipation is commonly discussed, even nationally.
All right. Do you hear anything from the mortgage holder community about people not being able to make their monthly mortgage payments, which would include their tax, their escrow account contribution?
I do not have any information from them. I don't know, Lynn, if you have in the studies that have been done.
Yeah, I've heard stuff, but it's all anecdotal. I don't, you know,
yeah.
I don't know
what we have seen and saw after the 2008 is that if property owners did not pay, the lender stepped in and paid for them, and then just adjusted because
they got it in the end. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Chair.
I wasn't asking a question, though.
Chair Parks, you're on mute.
Oh, Chair Parks.
I don't know why. I'm just going to leave it that way. I don't see any other hands raised, and looks like, you know, you've done a great job in presenting and therefore answered everybody's questions, you know, ahead of time. So very much appreciate that. You know, so thank you for being here today, and your staff. We appreciate, you know, meeting with you this way. You know, it's become the thing to do.
Well, thank you all. I went through it quickly thinking there would be several questions, so I apologize if I went too fast.
Oh, no.
No, you didn't. You did a great presentation, Tammy.
I think we liked it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.